You won't believe what happened when this HOA Karen decided to call 911 on me just because I wouldn't let her into my house. It all started when she showed up uninvited, demanding to trespass on my property and interfere with my private life. I was minding my own business, enjoying my day, when she barged onto my driveway with that familiar sense of entitlement. You know the type, acting like she owns the place, trying to control every little thing around her. But here's the twist: she didn't just knock on the door. No, she went straight to 911, claiming an emergency, saying that I was somehow preventing her from entering my own home. It was pure chaos, and I had no idea what to expect next. As the conversation turned into an all-out confrontation, I realized I was dealing with more than just an annoying neighbor. This was escalating quickly. What happens next? You won't want to miss how this crazy situation unfolds, especially when the police show up and tensions rise. Was I in the wrong for standing my ground, or was she overstepping in every possible way? Stick around to find out what happens when things go from bad to worse, and how this story ends with a shocking twist that no one saw coming. Stay tuned for part 2. To give you some context, this isn't the first time I've had issues with this particular HOA Karen. She's one of those people who thinks the homeowners association gives her the right to control everything in the neighborhood, especially when it comes to personal space. Over the past few months, she's complained about the smallest things, like the way I keep my front yard or the color of my mailbox. It got to the point where I was afraid to even breathe without her having something to say about it. But this time she took it too far. I was sitting in my living room when I saw her pulling into my driveway, and honestly, I had a bad feeling from the start. I knew she was up to something, but I never expected her to go as far as she did. She walked right up to my front door, knocked, and without any small talk, she demanded that I let her inside. She claimed she had some business to discuss, but I knew better. Something felt off. I stood my ground and told her I wasn't letting her in. That's when the real drama started. She started yelling, calling me rude, and accusing me of being unreasonable. But when she started taking out her phone and dialing 911, I knew things were getting out of hand. I was in complete shock, trying to figure out what I'd done to deserve this level of hostility. And just like that, my day turned into a full-blown nightmare. What was she going to say to the cops? I had no idea, but I was about to find out. I watched in disbelief as she pressed the call button on her phone, still standing on my doorstep like she was in charge of everything. Her voice was shaky but firm, and she started telling the 911 dispatcher some wild story about how I was threatening her and refusing her access to my property. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I mean, I was the one being accused of harassment, and she was acting like I had no right to protect my own home. But then something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to let her twist the situation. I walked out onto the porch to confront her directly, trying to keep my voice calm even though my blood was boiling. "You're making this up," I told her. "I'm not letting you into my house, and there's no emergency. You're trespassing." She just stood there, staring at me, unblinking. There was something about her expression that made the situation feel even more surreal. She didn't care that I was in the right. She wasn't going to back down, not when she was determined to make this about something bigger than it was. The more she spoke to the dispatcher, the more my frustration grew. Her tone became more dramatic, and I could hear her making things sound far worse than they were. She's refusing to let me in and threatening to call the cops on me. What? Was she serious? I didn't even raise my voice once, yet she was painting me as some kind of villain. That's when I heard the sirens in the distance, getting closer. My stomach turned. I was about to deal with an even bigger mess than I thought. What if the officers sided with her? What if they didn't believe me? I had no idea what to expect, but the last thing I wanted was for this to escalate even more. The anxiety was overwhelming, and as the sound of the sirens grew louder, I could feel my heart racing. What was going to happen next? The sirens grew louder, and the reality of what was about to happen hit me like a ton of bricks. I had no idea how this would play out. Would the police show up and think I was the problem? Would I end up getting a citation for something I didn't even do? I didn't know what kind of story she was spinning, but judging by her calm demeanor, it seemed like she was prepared for this. I could tell she had done this before, used the system to her advantage when things didn't go her way. As the first patrol car pulled up to the curb, my pulse shot through the roof. 2 officers stepped out, one tall with a stern look on his face, and the other more laid back, almost casual. The tension in the air was thick as they approached us. I could see the uncertainty in their eyes, like they were trying to figure out who was telling the truth. "Is there a problem here?" the taller officer asked, looking between us. His voice was firm but calm, like he had dealt with petty disputes like this all too often. I could tell they didn't know what to expect, but they sure as hell weren't taking sides just yet. Before I could even explain myself, HOA Karen jumped in, her voice shaky but desperate, pointing at me. "She's refusing to let me in, officer. I've been trying to talk to her about a neighborhood issue, and she's locking me out. I'm afraid she's going to do something crazy." I stared at her, stunned. She was painting me as the villain, like I was the one making things up. I could feel the blood rushing to my face, and I didn't know how to stay calm anymore. But I had to. I couldn't let her manipulate the situation further. I turned to the officer, trying to keep my voice steady. "Officer, I'm just trying to protect my privacy. She's the one trespassing, and now she's calling the cops on me for no reason. There's no emergency here. I haven't done anything wrong." The 2 officers exchanged glances, and I could feel my anxiety building. Would they believe me? Would they see through her act? I had no idea, but with the tension hanging in the air, I knew this wasn't going to end quietly. The next few moments would decide everything. Would I be able to keep my home safe from her accusations, or was I about to face a nightmare I couldn't control? The officers stood there for what felt like an eternity, exchanging those silent, unspoken looks, their judgment clearly still up in the air. I could feel the pressure mounting in my chest, the weight of the situation growing heavier with every passing second. Just as I opened my mouth to explain again, something happened that I never saw coming. A 3rd car pulled up, this time an unmarked vehicle. I didn't recognize the officer who stepped out. He wasn't wearing the usual uniform but a black jacket with a badge on it. My heart dropped into my stomach as I saw him approach the scene, and I couldn't help but wonder who he was. Was he a detective? Someone from the HOA? But then, I saw him nod to the officers, and that's when it hit me. He wasn't just another cop, he was her backup. Before I could process what was happening, the new officer spoke up, his voice sharp and direct. "I'm gonna need you to step aside, ma'am," he said, pointing to me. His tone was completely different from the first officer's, and I could already feel the power shift toward her side. I froze. My mind raced. Was she really that connected? How had she managed to pull in someone else into this mess? I looked at the first officer, who seemed more confused now than ever. But the new officer wasn't backing down. "We've had complaints about this property before. HOA issues, structural violations," he continued, glancing at Karen. "We're here to resolve them." That was the moment everything changed. This wasn't just about a disagreement over my front door anymore. This was about something far bigger, something I hadn't even known was going on behind the scenes. What complaints? What violations? Was she using the HOA to dig up dirt on me? I had no idea, but I was starting to realize I was in deeper trouble than I thought. Now, not only did I have to defend my own privacy, but suddenly I was being dragged into a much larger, more dangerous web of HOA politics, secrets, and manipulations. What did she know that I didn't? What had she been plotting all along? I was about to find out, but it didn't look good for me. The tension was thicker than ever as the officers gathered around, and I had no idea who to trust. Would I be able to protect my home from whatever Karen had planned, or was this just the beginning of something far worse? The tension in the air was suffocating as the new officer walked closer to me. I could barely keep my thoughts straight, everything spinning. Was this it? Was Karen finally going to win? But before I could even respond, the first officer interrupted, glancing at his partner and then back at me. "We're going to need to check the property," the first officer said, his tone turning more professional, the situation escalating fast. "There are claims, and we have to investigate." I felt my heart drop. This wasn't just about her trying to manipulate me anymore. This was real. I had no choice but to comply. Whatever she had said to make this happen was now forcing me to let them onto my property, and I couldn't back out. But just as they started walking toward my backyard gate, I saw something that made me stop dead in my tracks. A small crowd of neighbors had gathered, including one of the HOA board members. They had been watching the scene unfold from a distance, and then it hit me. The people who were backing Karen weren't just any neighbors. They were part of the HOA group that had been creating problems for me all along. I had no idea they had this kind of power over the local authorities. But then, as if the universe was throwing me a bone, one of my neighbors, an older gentleman who had always been quiet, stepped forward. "Excuse me, officers," he called out, his voice calm but firm. "I've been living here for over 30 years, and I've seen this woman," he pointed to Karen, "try to take control of everything in this neighborhood. She's been spreading rumors about that house for months. There are no violations." My jaw dropped. He wasn't just defending me, he was exposing the entire manipulation Karen had been orchestrating. The officers turned to him, and Karen's face twisted with anger. "You don't know what you're talking about," she snapped, but the damage was done. The officer who had sided with her earlier hesitated, then finally turned to the other officers. "You heard that right?" he said quietly. "Maybe we need to reconsider this." And just like that, it all unraveled. Karen's so-called violations were nothing but lies. She had fabricated the entire story to try to get me out of my own home. She hadn't just tried to use the HOA against me, she had tried to pull the police into her scheme. But the twist didn't stop there. As the officers walked away, Karen stood there fuming, her anger practically radiating off her. Just as I thought the worst was over, she turned on her heel and stormed off, only to bump straight into another neighbor who had overheard everything. The neighbor pulled out a phone, making it clear she was recording. "You know, Karen," the neighbor said coolly, "I'm sending this video to the HOA board. We're done letting you play these games." The irony of it all hit me. Karen had set herself up as the villain, and now her own manipulation was being used against her. The crowd was now whispering among themselves, and I could feel the weight lifting off my shoulders. My house was safe, my privacy protected. But just before she disappeared down the street, Karen shot one last glare at me, a look filled with promises of future drama. I knew it wasn't the end. This battle was over, but the war was far from done. What was she planning next? Only time would tell, but I was ready. As Karen disappeared down the street, I took a deep breath, finally feeling the weight of the situation lift off my chest. The officers gave me one last look, and with a few final words, they got back in their cars and drove off. The tension that had gripped my entire neighborhood seemed to dissipate, leaving behind a sense of uneasy peace. I was relieved, but I knew better than to think it was over. The neighbors who had witnessed the entire scene slowly began to disperse, exchanging quiet words with each other. The older man who had spoken up for me walked over with a smile. "Don't let people like her push you around. She's been causing trouble for years." I thanked him, grateful for his support, and felt a deep sense of appreciation for those who had stood by me when it mattered most. As for Karen, she may have slinked off for now, but I knew it wasn't the last time we'd cross paths. The power of the HOA, the lies, and the manipulation were all part of the bigger game, one that I couldn't ignore any longer. But now I was prepared. It wasn't just about protecting my property anymore, it was about standing up for what's right. Looking back, I realized how easily people like Karen can try to take control, but in the end, the truth and support of good neighbors always have a way of winning out. This chapter closed, but the lesson stuck. Never back down when you know you're in the right. And if you're ever faced with an HOA Karen of your own, trust me, it's not the end, it's just the beginning.